Chris. Firstly, mergers within the industry, how important are they, and have many in the past been a success?
Well, if we look around, we're certainly seeing a new momentum, not just across in the United States with United and Continental, but further south with LAN and TAM. But I think the key issue is what benefit they bring. And although at the time they're announced, there's great excitement about the possible synergies, the experience to date rather raises some questions of whether they're realised. That said, there are still good strategic reasons why Airline A might want to merge with Airline B, or Airline A might want to acquire Airline B to gain greater market presence in a particular area or gain access to a particular traffic flow.
So in the past, some of the big notable deals here in Europe, Lufthansa has been acquiring a few smaller airlines, Swiss, Austrian, Air France has got together with KLM. I mean, how have these mergers worked out in your opinion?
If we look at the Lufthansa model, which is different than, for example, Air France, KLM, and different from BA and Iberia, Lufthansa has a group of brands where its networks are integrated. We see that very clearly where, let's say, you fly from Manchester to India. You may be routed out one way over Frankfurt, you may come back the other way over Zurich. And what it does, not only does it give the Lufthansa network, for example, the Swiss market and also the Austrian market, but it gives them better network opportunities. And for a transfer carrier, it gives them better reach because it gives them a greater range of connections. Air France KLM was really about size, was putting Amsterdam and Charles de Gaulle as two key airports in Europe under effectively common ownership. The unfortunate thing is that although a number of synergies were advertised and the amount of synergies that were expected to continue to increase in the upswing of the cycle, the rather unfortunate thing is that Air France KLM looks as though it will be one of the last airlines to recover from the downturn. The difficulty there perhaps was that Air France management had to give undertakings to KLM and to the Dutch government that they weren't going to cut back at Schiphol for 7 years, and that rather constrained what they could do. So anything that was going to happen was going to be small and in really quite small incremental steps. If we look at BA and Iberia, again, because of the cross-border issue, you have a holding company and you have two companies within it. And in my opinion, this is much more about size rather than realising synergies even over the medium and longer term.
Okay, so how difficult do you think it will be then, in that case, for British Airways? I think they're talking about 400 million euros of synergies within 5 years, common IT platforms, aircraft spares. Is that something that is a realistic target? And in 5 years' time, do you think they'll be able to show us that they've achieved that?
But if we look at 400 million euros against the background of the amount of revenue of the combined company, it's about 2%. So you could argue that it's almost in the realms of forecasting error. If we look at it in a different way, yes, there are things that can be done around the margins, but it is clear that BA and Iberia are not going to be fully integrated. The view given for that is it's just too difficult, and whilst that may be very pragmatic, it means that a lot of the potential is unrealised, because at the end of the day, if you put two businesses together, really what you want the revenue without the cost that goes with it. But the difficulties in putting two businesses together, the difficulties in cutting back, particularly where labour is involved, means that you try your hardest to achieve something. Although, to put it again into context, BA's revenue this year alone is expected to be £500 million higher than it was last year because of the cyclical recovery. The structural benefits of so-called synergies are small, and from the outside, really, they're not that measurable.
Yeah, now Willie Walsh has also hinted that British Airways will be keen to maybe seek out more partners once the so-called international airline group is up and running. Where do you think he might turn? Which regions, which carriers do you think would look attractive to him?
I think if we look against the background, and management has articulated this, that it's about giving BA presence and BA and Iberia presence in the marketplace, and in effect raising the combined market cap to probably a shade over 4 billion euros. It's still a relatively small airline, say against even Ryanair, against Lufthansa, particularly against Singapore and Cathay if we look to the airlines in Asia. Asia is the most important market for structural growth. and we can see how quickly it bounced back from the cyclical downturn. So Asia is where everybody is focused and they want to gain access to the markets. The difficulty for an Asian airline coming into IAG is that its owners might have to give up some of their growth because the growth of BA and Iberia almost by definition is going to be lower than that offered by an Asian airline. So Asia must be the area of great interest. There's always American. But again, we see the antitrust immunity being given. Perhaps that's a toe, or it is a toe in the water to see where benefit can be derived from integrating networks and better passenger flows and a more efficient system. Whether American comes into that, we wait and see. But the market which offers structural growth is clearly Asia, but that's a market that everybody wants to increase their access to.
Okay, and just regarding America, I wonder if there are limits on foreign ownership within the US. Do you see that changing anytime soon, allowing carriers to expand perhaps across continents? No,
I don't. I think if they were going to do anything, we would have seen it as the second phase of this latest discussion between, or negotiation between the EU and the US. And indeed, there was an expectation we would see some relaxation of ownership as an element of stage two. That didn't happen, and similarly, neither did we see the threat being put into place that the rights that US carriers had to fly into Europe would be removed or withdrawn. So we are pretty much where we were before, other than that US carriers have perhaps greater access to the European market than they did in the past.